As soon as you enter what once was the town of Paradise, the scale of destruction is painfully clear and overwhelming.
There were some houses over there. It's just completely devastating.
Christina Taft has lived here for 10 years. It was an idyllic spot, nestled in the trees of the foothills. But in just a few hours, most of this town of 27,000 was destroyed.
Completely gone.
We turn into her neighborhood and the home she fled nearly 2 weeks ago.
It's just completely like crumbled ash.
This is the first time she's returned since the fire.
Neighbors stuff. He warned us, and this is just completely leveled.
And this is also the final place she saw her mother.
She was in the kitchen, like the couch was there, and you know, there was actually things here, and now it's just unrecognizable. Can't even tell.
A neighbor had knocked on Taft's door the morning of the fire, urging them to leave. Christina started packing, but says her mother, 66-year-old Victoria Taft, who was partially blind, refused to go. She hadn't heard an evacuation order from officials, so she wanted to stay put. The two got into a fight, and as the sky darkened and ash rained down, Christina panicked and left.
So just was expecting it not to be as bad, and then it's like this, and all gone in the ceiling, and it's literally buried.
Heavenly Father, please help us.
For all those who tried to escape that day, the drive out was terrifying. Roads were choked with traffic. The fire was spreading rapidly. Once she realized how bad it was, Christina tried calling 911, hoping firefighters could rescue her mom. Later that day, she started searching at the evacuation centers and reported her mother missing. Then a few days later, searchers found her remains.
That was a living room. They must have found her because they dug there. Just sitting in the living room.
It's not yet clear how many people were trapped by the fire, but many of those who lived here were elderly, and some couldn't make it out on their own. In the days after, boards were plastered with desperate pleas from family members. Many suspected hundreds were unaccounted for. When the official list came out, more than 1,000 names were on it.
You know, there was a discussion. They talked about this. They said, Sheriff, if we put this out, you know, there's going to be big. There's going to be duplicate. It may you know, cause some people concern about the length of it. But I ultimately felt it was more important to get the information out.
Some of the names were on there twice. Other entries are incomplete. Each day, the list swells and shrinks depending on who else is reported missing and who is found. For evacuees and their families, there's been a haze of confusion and miscommunication. People are scattered and homeless. There's the stress of losing everything, followed by the dread of not being able to connect with a friend or relative.
So we don't know where he is, so that's why we're here to hopefully give a DNA sample.
People are submitting DNA samples so it can be compared against the more than 80 remains that have already been found.
And there's going to be a lot of people displaced.
Terry Poliquin's family submitted theirs.
Just wait, have time, you know, wait for the DNA to come in for my aunt and my brother to find out if he has perished. That's the only thing that we can do right now. I think I've done everything I can.
Poliquin was living in this RV park. His home survived the fire, and a neighbor we spoke to even said she was sure she saw him leave.
I mean, when did you see him last?
Thursday, the day the fire started. Right, not too long after they came through and said everybody needed to evacuate. So I know they loaded him up and got him out of there. So, and you know, nobody's been back since.
A lot of people have been sharing it.
But his daughter Alicia Martin and the rest of the family couldn't get a hold of him. They reported him as missing.
So, you know, it's not like him to not contact his daughter, especially with a disaster like this. I'm just hoping I get answers, you know, and I know a lot of people out there are waiting for answers.
And the family finally got one, news they happily shared online. Just hours ago, he texted them. His cell phone had been lost in the evacuation. That's one more name that can be removed from this list, but so many others remain.
Finish right down here on this creek bottom right there. We're going to reline out from there again and push back towards the road.
Hundreds of searchers have fanned out across the unrecognizable neighborhoods, picking through the ash and rubble of the 13,000 buildings that were incinerated here.
All of these properties were quickly searched after the fire, but now crews are taking a much more thorough look. And when they're done, they spray paint a marking on the driveway like this one. It says what time the crews were here and also whether or not there was a victim.
Phil, as you make your way up here, this is the tub and the shower. Okay. And that looks like the upper piece of it right there in front of you. So I think that's a bed.
Jason Denton and his team of volunteers came from Oregon to help out. They're focused on searching what were bedrooms and living rooms, places where people were likely to be.
So since we can't sift through everything, we're looking for the high probability areas.
At this lot, they spent more time carefully lifting up parts of a roof and walls because they noticed that at this house there was a wheelchair ramp.
How does this compare to what your team would normally search?
Normally we're looking for a missing person out in the woods that's alive. And so this is drastically different than what we're normally used to looking for. Even if it's a person that's no longer alive, not of this scale. We have no idea how many or what will be out here. So this is a big eye opener. We brought 12 volunteers down here and they'll all be changed when we get back.
They then take another sweep of Christina Taft's home and where her mother's body was found.
Oh, here's another photo of her too.
One of the few things she packed before the fire was pictures.
Yeah, it's just terrible, you know, when had all of that, got all the stuff in my car and then not her. And
looking at them today, she feels consumed with guilt.
I did pack. You know, it was terrible to think how, you know, dying in flames, and I could have stayed longer and waited. It's just really awful.
Her mother, one of the many victims in what is now the deadliest fire ever in California. And that list will almost certainly grow as crews go lot by lot, picking through what once were homes and are now the site of a grim search.
Briar joins us now for more. Briar, given what you've seen in Paradise, what really stands out for you?
Well, Adrian, really just the sheer level of destruction. In a town of 26,000, 13,000 buildings were destroyed, so nearly everybody is now homeless. People are living in tents at the Walmart, at the fairground. You have families of 5 or 6 cramped in a single motel room and now trying to figure out just what's next. And of course, the other thing is all of the uncertainty around the death toll and just how high it could be. And it's really hard to understate all of the confusion around the number of people still missing. A lot of people have been putting up posts online looking for their relatives, and I spoke with one woman who said she received a message from someone that her aunt had been found. So obviously a lot of relief there, but then she found out a few hours later that that person was wrong. Her aunt was still missing. So that miscommunication and confusion really just makes a terrible situation all that much worse.
You know, it's so interesting to get your perspective on this, Briar. You've covered wildfires like this before. You were in Fort McMurray when fire tore through that city. How does the situation in Paradise compare?
Well, there's no doubt that the fire in Fort McMurray was devastating, but really what happened in Paradise was worse on every single level. Think of the evacuation. In Fort McMurray, 90,000 people were able to leave the city and no one died as they left Fort McMurray. Well, in Paradise, that certainly didn't happen. We don't know how many people didn't make it out, but we do know some people had to abandon their cars and try to outrun the fire on foot. In Fort McMurray, a lot of people were certain that they were going to rebuild. Some of the folks I've been speaking with in Paradise say that they're not sure that they want to go back. Not only is the town nearly destroyed, but they don't want to move back into neighborhoods where there's been so much death, Adrian.
Okay, Briar, thanks very much. Briar Stewart in California tonight.